Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport.
The man is incredible.
The thrill of victory.
Absolutely the best.
And the agony of defeat.
Hey, look at him go! Oh, baby. Oh, no!
This is ABC's Wide World of Sports.
And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Gentlemen, start your engines!
If that doesn't get you ready for a fight, nothing will. Michael Buffer getting things started here. For the first time in '99, ABC Sports is ready to go racing. Today, it's the Pep Boys Indy Racing League, ready to open the season. It's a TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200 at Walt Disney World Speedway. Let's go trackside right away in Jackaroo.
Last year, Paul, this man captured 2 races. Already this year, he's on the pole at over 170 miles an hour. Scott Sharp would like to score the first victory of 1999. This is the car that went to Walt Disney World Victory Lane last year. Not this driver. Greg Ray replaces Tony Stewart. He'd like to use his lead foot to get to his first victory ever, Gary.
Couple of big winners back here in mid-pack in row 7. Eddie Cheever, brand new colors this year. He won the Indy 500 last year, and he won here 2 years ago. And next to him, one of A.J. Foyt's drivers, that's Billy Boat. Billy Boat started from the pole 6 times last year, but the one race he won, he didn't start from the pole. Keep an eye on row 7, Paul.
Well, there's a lot of anticipation here today. In a lot of ways, it's the neatest day of the year. New teams, new cars, new drivers, and everybody with a blank piece of paper. And this, the first of 11 races that leads to the championship. But even more importantly, this is the first of 2 races that will lead us up to the 83rd running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Now, they call this an oval, a tri-oval. Tom Sneva, in reality, it's a triangle.
Well, it really is, and it causes the straightaways to be very, very short, making this really a driver's racetrack. You've got to hustle the car to get around this racetrack in a fast amount of time. Now, you need to almost become Western. If you don't feel like you're standing up in the seat a couple times every lap, there's probably somebody closing the gap from behind. But one of the real keys here is going to be the traffic. The guy that's the best psychic among the drivers, who can predict the future. Now, in a mile oval, the future is only milliseconds out, but it happens every lap. The guy that can predict what's going to happen in front of him before he actually gets there is the guy that's going to run up front.
All right, there are 28 ready to take the green flag and start this race. On the pole, it's Scott Sharp, second career pole and his first since the summer of '97. Alongside is Greg Ray, the 4th time that he's started on the front row. In row 2, Raul Boisel, the best starting position for this veteran. And Scott Goodyear looking for his first IRL win after finishing second 3 times. In row 3, Kenny Breck, the defending Pep Boys IRL champion. And Jeff Ward, who came from 24th to finish second here a year ago. In row 4, Sam Schmidt taking over for the semi-retired Ari Leyendyke. And Buddy Lazier, the '96 Indy 500 champion. In row 5, Tice Carlson, his best career start for this former midget driver. And Mark Dismore, who ran out of fuel last year while leading with just 5 laps to go. In the 6th row is Buzz Calkins, who won the first event here 3 years ago. And Roberto Guerrero. Row 7, Eddie Cheever and Billy Boat. Row 8, Jason Leffler and Stan Waddles. In the 9th row, Steve Knapp and John Hollingsworth. Row 10, John Paul Jr. and Davey Hamilton. The 11th row, Robbie Unser and Donnie Beechler, whose car has not started. Row 12, Walter Salas and Robbie Buell. The 13th row, Brian Tyler and Stefan Gregoire. And in row 14, Andy Mitchner and Scott Harrington. Robbie Buell should move to the 26th starting position because he's moved to his backup car. We have a 1-mile tri-oval, 200 laps, 200 miles, and the first time they should need to refuel is sometime about the 60th to the 70th lap. And then in this race, too, there are rookies, 3 of them who are starting on an IRL circuit for the first time. The rest, this is their first time at Walt Disney World Speedway. Let's go to Jackaroo.
Paul, the reason for the big fuel window, it's a 1-mile oval. Every lap that you run under caution gives you an additional lap that you can run under green. It'll be a fluid life decision. That's why it's so wide, Gary.
And of course, since they went to the naturally aspirated engine 2 years ago, Aurora has been the dominant power plant. They've won 19 straight races, but Infinity has made strong moves. Roberto Guerrero, one of 3 Infinity drivers today, starts in mid-pack in car number 50. We're anxious to see if they can get up and contend for the lead. Paul?
New cars, new teams, some new ideas. This will make for a great year. Donnie Beechler did not start, and they do not have him started yet, as Johnny Rutherford in the pace car now bringing the field off the second corner toward the third, and we should see a green flag as they head for the start-finish line. We will be then underway for the 1999 season. Look at him sparkle in the sunshine. Pick your favorite, and here we go. Scott Sharp, the pole sitter, moves quickly to the lead, followed by Greg Ray, then Scott Goodyear. Raul Boycell moves into fourth. Ray comes up to challenge on Scott Sharp. Through turn 2 for the first time. 4.8G lateral there. Scott Sharp takes the first lap here at Walt Disney World Speedway.
They're all hoping now that they've guessed right on the chassis setup, Paul. They're going to feel it out for a corner or two, and then you're either going to see them go forward or back. And right now, Scott Sharp's pulled out a couple car lengths on Greg Ray.
And there is Greg Ray, the 2-car. That's going to be an interesting adjustment this year because we're so accustomed to seeing Tony Stewart in that car. We're accustomed to seeing this man in the Pennzoil livery. That, of course, is Scott Goodyear.
This is inside Scott's car right here, the inboard camera. Again, you can see the racetrack is pretty smooth, especially in that area.
Well, car in trouble. Car in trouble coming off at turn 1.
Jason Leffler. It's Jason Leffler, a rookie in this race. He's been real quick in the practice earlier, Paul.
You know what's interesting about this? Apprehension, worry. Jason spun twice in the warm-up practice. They also, in the practice that they've had here at Walt Disney World, he had a couple of problems as well. So that's going to be a great disappointment for a truly fine young race driver.
Well, he really is. He's done a lot of testing for this team, and they were so impressed that they put him in the race car. But again, it's a rookie, and you know, a lot of things, a lot of pressure on these guys the first race out.
So with just a couple of laps complete, we're into a yellow flag situation at Walt Disney World Speedway. Back at Walt Disney World Speedway, 6 laps complete, but we're under the yellow, Jackaroo.
Well, there's a problem developing for Scott Sharp. Now, he wears a helmet just like the fuelers do. The visor pulls down, and there are tearaways that go across connected between here and here. The problem is those tearaways have fogged up. Now the discussion is whether to tear all the tearaways away or try to live with the fog for a while. Gary?
And a quick update on Donnie Beechler. They pulled him off the racetrack down into the pit exit area. They backed the car up to the A.J. Foyt-Kenny Breck pit, and then they changed electronics, and with an assist from Foyt's team, got him restarted. But as he pulled away and got out to the racetrack, it died again. And so now they're pushing him all the way back along pit road toward his pit, clear down at the other end of the racetrack. A tough, tough start for Donnie Beechler in a brand new season.
Yeah, a lot of disappointment there. Disappointment, too, for Jason Leffler. There is his 5-car up on the hook, and how he got it there. Well, he was coming off at turn 1 when he got himself in trouble.
Well, again, Jason Leffler, he's sideways in the middle of the track. Right there is when you get after the throttle. Now, if you try to jump back in that throttle a little too quick, the back end will come around, and that's exactly what happened to Jason.
And so Eddie Cheever, who has won this race and the defending 500 champion, there he is. Now, Eddie Cheever is going to hopefully do very well this year. A short track like this, high velocity rear engine car, just like living inside a cyclone. No one can teach it better than this man, the man who won here 2 years ago and is the Indy 500 champion, Eddie Cheever.
Orlando, due to its unique configuration of being a trio, was one of the most difficult circuits that we race on. It's not only hard to do a fast lap for qualifying, but the trick, if you wish to win here, is to be able to run in traffic. These are 3 corners that are all unique. They're all different speeds. Some are faster, some are slower. And when you have a car in front of you, it's even more difficult. What you have to remember is that all of these drivers have a spotter telling them who is close behind them and who is up ahead. So there's a lot of communication. Let me just show you a few scenes that we have here from in-car cameras. This car here is running into dirty air. By dirty air, that means the cars in front are moving all the air and giving him an advantage of being able to cut through the air quicker. He's trying to pass the car, but the car on the outside obviously is not of the same opinion. Now, what he has to do is tuck in behind him, get a small draft, and then slingshot past him. A very easy thing to do in principle, but in essence, it's not that common. Here you're rushing up into turn 2 behind a whole gaggle of cars. Now all these guys are in line, and they're all trying to go faster, but there's nowhere to go. That car had a unique advantage because they were sitting in the air. Another really difficult thing is to pass a car, but you're never by yourself, so your spotter has to tell you what the car behind you is doing. This driver here, which is me, is trying to make sure the car behind him doesn't pass him. This is one of the biggest nightmares you can have. Passing a car, and all of a sudden, right up ahead of you, there's somebody who broke an engine. And if you run up on somebody's oil, you're in big trouble. This is what it looks like when you drive up at 180 miles an hour behind a car that just spun. It's not fun, and you have to make a decision immediately as to where you're going to go. That was just a few things that will happen here on Sunday, and I hope that I'm involved in none of them.
And of course, though, much of that, the same things that Tom Sneva alluded to. It's neat on these short little tracks. Well, don't forget, coming up next on ABC Sports, except on the West Coast, the pros have the course all to themselves in the final day of the 40th Bob Hope Chrysler Classic. Fred Funk led by 1 shot over Steve Pate going in today's 5th and final round. And you can hit the links online. Just hit AOL online, keyword ABC Sports.
Well, we heard Eddie talk about this racetrack, and it is tough. I mean, you've got to get Western like we talked about, but the real key is turn 1. If you can keep the car balanced and get after the throttle on the exit of turn 1. Turns 2 and 3 are real close to flat out, especially qualifying, but where time can be lost or gained is keeping the car balanced so you don't develop an understeer on the exit of turn 1.
Tom, a quick note on following that up, what Cheever said about traffic. Jason Leffler had 3,500 test miles, but his concern was he never ran in traffic. And on the very first laps of a brand new season, it cost him.
Of course, running in traffic is an entirely different world than going out and go fast alone.
Well, it is, but you've got to add in the adrenaline flow of the first race of the year and the crowd in the grandstand. I mean, those kind of things may be a bigger factor than any of those others.
Scott Sharp will bring them back to the green. Race control radio there. You will hear it from time to time, as from many of the onboard camera cars. You will hear the commentary of both the spotters, the team manager, crew chief, and the driver. No problems here for Sharp. It seems that the veterans are taking it very careful. That's looking back from Scott Sharp toward Greg Ray.
Well, again, Paul, it's a lot easier to run up front where there's clean air. The guys back in the pack don't have nearly the luxury of the guy that's leading this race.
That's right. We've got some telemetry for you this year, too. There it is for Scott Sharp. Doesn't tell you 100% throttle, but let me tell you, that foot's pinned.
Well, no question about that. The telemetry's good for, the 1 or 2%, so I'll guarantee he's got his foot in the floor right now, not at 98%.
And keep a close eye on the G loading, the lateral G loading. Look how it climbs through here.
That just tells you how hard your eyeballs are banging against the side of your head, Paul.
Coming off at turn 3 now down the front stretch. Breathe it a little right here. Now, theoretically, if everything's working right, you should be able to keep the hammer down all the way around until you get back to turn 1.
Right, and we got off the telemetry, so it sounds like he might have got out of the throttle just a little bit. As the tires warm up, it's a little harder to run that thing flat through turn 2.
That's something I always hear from you guys, so we're going to take a look at Scott Sharp. Look for Greg Ray. There he is coming through. Here is Sharp over between 1 and 2. Before telemetry, you guys used to always say, oh, I'm flat all the way around. After telemetry, that story changed a little.
I know. They made us a lot more accurate on what we told the crew. We got a problem on the back straightaway.
Problem down the back stretch.
Between 1 and 2.
Much the same place as Leffler. Much the same kind of situation, but this time might be his teammate, Sam Schmidt. In fact, it is.
Well, again, he's knocked off the right rear wheel here. We noticed on Jason's crash, he got the left rear, and Sam's a lot farther down the racetrack than where Jason was. So maybe Sam actually got it loose on the exit of 1 and tried to catch it, but didn't get away with it.
Boy, not a great start for Fred Treadway's team, though. maybe what we can actually say is that Arie Luyendyk has been coaching this team. Maybe they ought to check out the coach.
Well, there you can see he's already in the grass on the infield, so he's had the car spinning, and we're just seeing the end of this thing. Obviously, he's hit the right rear on the wall. And we got his teammate.
Yeah, while we're looking here, his teammates down in the pits with Jack.
Well, Paul, before we talk to Jason Leffler, you know those tearaways we were talking about? Here's one off of Jason's. That's how tough they are to get off. He's got plenty because you didn't last very long. You were concerned about traffic, Jason.
Yeah, you know, it's just really embarrassing to get all those testing miles under my belt and then do something stupid like that. But, yeah, you know, I think we had a good car. You didn't allow the temperatures and the pressures to come up. And, I just got behind in qualifying, and I've been panicked ever since. So, yeah, you know, I was real excited about the start. I feel bad for all the guys.
When you have an unpleasant or an unsettling state of mind like you've had for the last couple of days, how heavy a toll does that take on your psyche?
Well, it does, this being my first race, you know, and getting directions from everybody in the team. But they all did a great job. I just feel bad for wrecking the car. You know, I've done 3,500 miles without putting a scratch on it, and here I come to the race and do something like that. I'm really embarrassed.
Paul, he can load up on those tearaways. He'll need them through this season.
Jason Leffler and his teammate Sam Schmidt out. Treadway Racing in the early going here at Walt Disney World. Back at the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200, Paul Page with Tom Sneva under yellow again. That's the car. It's Sam Schmidt's machine. And Tom, here's what happened.
Well, again, it's coming off of turn one. You can see Sam, he's quite a ways at the exit of the corner when the thing jumps sideways. A little surprising. You've got to get after the throttle, and most of these guys thought they would develop understeer during the race, so they might have overcompensated, worrying about the front, losing the front end after a few laps. But I think this is a surprise to these guys because they're actually getting loose on the exit of turn one instead of developing a push.
The first race of a season's always a little neat. New equipment, the new teams, new dreams. But because it is all new, it takes a little more careful approach.
Well, a lot of new combinations, new teams, new drivers, or, you know, drivers switch teams and so on. I think there's a lot of familiarization going on. You know, some teams that stay together probably be better prepared than the new ones. So it's a kind of watch who does what.
Drivers always trying to blow the cobwebs out, be a little bit antsy at the beginning of the race. Hard to have patience when you're trying to, you know, establish an identity as the year starts.
You know, getting the jitters out, you know, the new season, wanting to start off on a good note and, you know, not have any problems is probably one of the biggest anticipations about going into the first race.
A lot of people, a lot of drivers, I should say, and a lot of teams are not as prepared as we should be maybe after a long winter break, you know, so there's a lot of chances for more incidents than normal. So you got to take that into consideration, try to avoid getting into problems.
So the veterans recognize it, and in fact today we're seeing them take it very, very careful. You look at the field as they come through now, the 30 car, Raul Boisel. Jeff Ward right behind him, and the rest of the field as they start to pick the speed up, and we should be coming back to the green.
We've heard on the radio, Paul, that Scott Sharp, his only complaint so far is he feels the car's been bottoming out. Now, when they have a full load of fuel and trying to run the car low for grip, sometimes it'll bottom out. But obviously, it's not affecting him too bad because he's still leading this baby.
Tom, in fact, one of the things that they were a little bit surprised by the performance of the car is the fact that right now it's neutral. That means it's not even pushing and it's not even loose. But as the fuel begins to run down, as you know, that will dramatically change the handling.
Well, it really will. And if he's neutral now, it's probably going to tend to go a little bit loose on him as he runs that thing low on fuel. So the key will be if he's got the sway bars and enough adjustment inside the cockpit of the car to adjust for the fuel load as it goes down.
Moving a little further back now, you got a glimpse of Scott Goodyear. And we, of course, will continue to give the running order on the bottom of the screen with a lap count and the distance behind the leader. Cars this year, Tom, they've had rev limiters for some time. That's part of the IRL formula. This year, they've got 2 of them on board.
Yeah, they really do. This is Kenny Breck on his in-car. They do. They have a backup system. Last year it was 10.5. This year they've lowered it to 10.3, and they actually have a backup device that's directly on the flywheel of the motor. So if they get by the first ECU thing, they can't get by the second one.
Another problem down the backstretch. Off at 2, a little further.
Again, off of turn 1, it's Beechler, the guy that didn't get started at the beginning of the race. The good news is he's still rolling.
Car number 98, black 98. Come on, kept going.
This is where the driver thanks his lucky stars, because he's actually spun the car and got away with it.
Get a good idea of the balance of these cars. Right rear is flat.
Yep.
Look at the left front off the ground.
Well, the cars are very stiff, so when you lose air pressure in the right rear, it's going to lift the left front off the ground.
This tilts the whole chassis. So our third yellow of the day, Scott Sharp has led it from the pole position, followed by Ray and Goodyear. And nothing changes with this third yellow. We'll be back with this message after a word from our ABC stations.
The Pep Boys Indy Racing League. Today featuring the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200 continues.
We bring you back, and they're under green. And you're on board with Mark Dismore. Now, just ahead of him there, that is former Indy 500 champion Buddy Lazier. This is a battle for 6. Dismore jumped out just a second ago and overhauled Kenny Breck pretty quickly. And then Tice Carlson got around Breck as well. So we'll keep an eye on Breck, but this is the fight on the circuit with Scott Sharp leading.
Well, Dismore, a teammate, the Kelly team obviously has done their homework. The only car really going forward right now is Mark Dismore.
Sharp, Ray, Goodyear, those are your front 3. Then Boycell and Jeff Ward will stay here.
You can hear the throttle. That's inside Dismore's car. Again, they run pretty well flat through turns 3 onto the front straightaway, but half the left in turn 1.
That's Lazier that he's just slowly reeling in, and then Jeff Ward just ahead of him. Now you saw Sam Schmidt get into trouble a few minutes ago. Jack Arute, how is he?
Well, Paul, he's fine. In fact, you know, Tom Steven was talking about bottoming out. Bottoming out is what put you out of the race.
Yeah, I mean, this morning the car was just so loose, and it's not where you want to be, so made some pretty substantial changes, and from the start, it was just bouncing, and it just bounced wrong, and nothing I could do. I mean, it's really disappointing for Sprint PCS. They got 150 people out here, but, you know, we'll just have to buckle down and get ready for Phoenix. Good luck. Thank you.
Boy, look at this.
Traffic
Scott
there.
Goodyear now trying to move on second place. Boy, they get all bottled up as they come up on traffic. Ray and Goodyear fighting. There's the leader, Scott Sharp. But Scott Goodyear took advantage of some of that traffic, and he jumped right in there.
Well, again, they're starting to get into traffic now. They're starting to catch some of the guys that were running towards the back, and it's going to play a big factor is trying to get through this traffic.
This is what makes the 1 mile oval so much fun. They catch the back of the field, a 28-car field, pretty quickly. Looking out the back of Raul Boycell's car. He's the 4th place car. Looking back, of course, to Jeff Ward.
Well, I talked about at the opening, standing up in the seat. And believe me, some of these guys are standing up in the seat right now.
That's Raul Boycell, TransWorld Diversified Services car. They've really jumped into racing big time, sponsoring this event as well as that car throughout the season.
Well, Boycell has a lot of new members on that team and really came out of the box strong with a great qualifying run.
Back on board with Scott Goodyear. He chases Greg Ray, the car that used to belong to Tony Stewart.
Well, and we saw that Goodyear actually had a run on Ray, but Ray had to check up in traffic. Now, once they got out of traffic, Ray's able to hold Goodyear off at this point.
Goodyear is reeling him in there.
Paul, as we watched that battle with Scott Goodyear, he had an off-track adventure last night as his 3-year-old son Michael was roughhousing with his big brother Christopher. Fell off the bed in the hotel, broke his arm above the elbow in 2 places. This morning he proudly told his dad with a big splint on it, "Daddy, I got a big boo-boo." Right now, all that's put away as Goodyear stalks Greg Ray.
I think that sounds like Big Brother's story. He fell off the bed. Yeah.
No, my little brother fell off the bed more than once. Well, he was reeling him in. You saw the numbers a moment ago. It ebbs and it flows a little bit. Goodyear was right up there, then he had to fall back. Traffic's still very much a factor, but they've got a clear run. Goodyear's going to be able to take advantage of anything before they close on that group ahead.
Well, Scott is a little bit quicker than Greg Ray, but when he gets up behind him, he gets into the dirty air, and it upsets the balance of the car. So it's real tough on these fast mile ovals. You might be a little quicker, but you don't have enough to get by.
Paul, in the past, Greg Ray was the kind of driver that drove just like his predecessor, Tony Stewart, flat out and belly to the ground. But Greg told me before the start of this race, he was going to back it down a notch. He said, "I don't think that I can prove anything in the first half."
Oh, Scott Goodyear just got trapped. Greg Ray moved down to the inside. Goodyear was coming down with a slower car just in front. Well, and here is Boesel. Now he sits back. Boesel's just behind that battle, so that's the fight ahead as they come. Look at all the traffic.
Oh yeah, this is great stuff. Boesel's just watching to see what happens here. Actually,
Goodyear moves, Boesel moves.
And Goodyear really didn't get trapped. His only move was to try to go on the outside and hope that something happened to the traffic in front of him. So it wasn't any kind of mistake by Scott's mark. He was just hoping that something might happen.
Well, look at him continue to fight up side by side just ahead. Well, and Sharp is not that far ahead of him now.
No, Scott got by. You see him got underneath. So Scott Goodyear is going towards the front. That's a G-force.
Back on board Goodyear, you saw Jeff Ward. He was working on the back of Raul Boesel.
That's Scott Harrington right in front of him. Scott lets him go underneath. That's an Infinity car that Goodyear just got by.
So with that fight, Goodyear comes to second, now sets his sights, look way ahead on the track, but really...
Well, look at that traffic. Look at Greg Ray trying to work his way through traffic. Raul in the blue and black car on the inside.
Now with Buddy Lazier, he's running down there in 5th place. Boesel just ahead of him. The traffic is letting Sharp run away from him now. He got bottled in it for a second, but now he's pulling away.
This is where these guys earn their money, trying to get through that traffic. But this is really what makes it fun from a driver's standpoint.
And Scott Harrington, he's the white and yellow car there in the front. He's kind of caught up in this whole thing. Buddy Lazier, look at him as he moves on Boesel.
Well, yeah, that could have been a traffic situation, but Buddy has always had a little trouble qualifying, but he's been real strong in the race.
Harrington, the second car ahead there. These are the leaders overhauling him. Remember, he was the guy at the Indy 500 that was going to qualify in the field as we go on board with Kenny Breck. He was going to qualify and ran a 217-mile-an-hour first lap, more than enough, but he didn't know that he was running that fast, ended up crashing it. Very deserving guy with a team that they've just put together.
Well, it's tough. Racing is real tough. Kenny Breck, you see the middle of those 3 cars right there. He's been moving backwards throughout this segment, so I don't know if the car is getting loose. We've talked to a lot of these guys, and the car is looser today than most of these guys anticipated.
Well, Lee Breck is up there in the Foyt car running just behind Ward and Boesel.
That's a TransWorld car. This is
Buddy Lazier with an engine maybe going over there with Harrington.
Yeah, you saw the moisture on Lazier's camera there, so Scott isn't having a good day.
Harrington came substantially off the pace. Buddy Lazier comes around Stefan Gregoire.
That's a new team. Stefan Gregoire didn't run last year. The previous year he was there, but he's back with Dick Simon, a new team.
I ran last year with Chastain Motorsports. This is obviously a new operation for him.
We got a car slowing down, entering turn 2 over there.
Yeah, that's the one that we mentioned. Oh, that's too bad. They just, within the last 30 days, this whole team has gone together. And that, of course, that's... We're going to have to keep track of the engines on this thing because Infinity is getting stronger this year. Scott Sharp works his way through traffic.
Again, no yellow for Harrington as of now, but he's almost stopped in turn 2. I don't know if he got in the pit lane or not, but again, there it is. There it is.
Race control calls out the 4th caution of the day because Scott Harrington wasn't able to get all the way off of the course. Let's get you up to speed. We've been away for little time here, and I'll tell you what, everything in the world seemed to happen as everybody, well, not everybody, but most of the field, certainly the leaders, came into the pits.
Well, yeah, again, the yellow came out for Harrington, and everybody took advantage of it. That's Scott Sharp just leaving the pit. He came in first, out first. There's Goodyear. Again, Goodyear came in second and left second, so good stops by both those teams.
So that gets you up to speed on why we are away. We're back to the action now, but the yellow is still out. Tice Carlson did not go into the pits, and so he assumed the lead of the race as he came around. Scott Sharp and Goodyear and Greg Ray maintained their same relative positions. There's Scott Goodyear. And we'll see what the game is that Tice Carlson and his team, and for that matter, perhaps Gregoire and his team, are playing. Now, Saturday at 2:30 Eastern. So now we are under our 4th yellow of the day. Unfortunately for the Treadway team, they've had a terrible day. Both their cars are out. And we're going to keep an eye on the mix at the front. Now, remember the way the rules run. You stay out, you're going to assume the lead, but of course you're going to have to pit at some time.
Well, it's a little bit of a gamble for Tice, obviously, to stay out and not pit at that time.
Well, at this point, the race, 57 laps. Tice Carlson, great guy, lost 30 pounds over the winter. Still a pretty big boy. He's the leader, but because he did not stop, we've had 4 different cautions.
Well, we see that happen a lot. You know, the crew works all winter to try to shave a few pounds off the race car so they can put the ballast where they want it, and then the driver comes back 5 or 10 pounds heavier, drives the crews crazy. But in Tice's case, he went to work at it and has lost a bunch of weight.
And Tice feels off, but he's got to feel good in knowing that he has now read his first IRL race. Jack?
Well, here's a situation every driver would like to be in. Scott Sharp and his team are literally fine-tuning the performance of their Kelly Racing machine. They've been back and forth on the radio, and Tom Stephen, during that last stop, the only change, and they consider this a major change, was 1/2 pound of air pressure in the tires. Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
And let's check on Scott Goodyear's progress. He had that battle with Greg Ray, got up into 2nd place, and he likes the way the car's working. When they came in for that stop, it was routine. The only change they made, they slightly went up on air pressure on the right rear. This team down here is excited. Well, you can certainly tell it's the start of a new season, and everybody's savoring the fact that they're competitive up front.
Well, with Goodyear going up a pound in the right rear, it would indicate to us that the car has just a slight understeer. The front tires are pushing a little bit on the exit of turn 1. So to correct that, which they didn't make a big change, either did Sharp, those drivers got to be smiling, because when you make that fine of an adjustment, you know the car is close.
Now here's the race order as we're ready to go back to the green flag. But in front of the race order is the 7 car of Stefan Gregoire. He's the one that's actually lined up right behind Johnny Rutherford in the pace car right now. And then the race itself is lined up behind him. 58 laps. There's the complete rundown for you. And we should be going green now. They still have to clear one more vehicle off the course and get it back into position before they are ready to go back to the green flag once again. Here's the field.
You can see the lights are off in the pace car, but yeah, they stayed out. They're continue under the yellow.
Beautiful day. There were a lot of rain that came through this area last night. You know, the man who wins today will master the track, but as Tom Stevens said, more importantly, the traffic. For these drivers, it's a dance at nearly 200 miles an hour.
This is probably the most difficult track we go to all year long. It's a tri-oval. It's a very fast track. It's very difficult to pass.
Traffic plays a big thing. You got to be able to try to get in and get out of people and not get too held up. It's a very momentum-oriented racetrack, particularly through turns 2 and 3. There's high speed enough that if a guy doesn't want you to get by him, he can easily hold you up a little bit. So you really have to be able to get through turn 1 well.
It's busy. I mean, you know, there are 3 turns out here, so there's stuff that just keeps you on your toes all the time. And you know, when we first came down here, you didn't think you would be able to do anything and get by guys in the race, but come race time, you know, you can always find a way by.
Well, I think Orlando's a tough racetrack because you're not in a straight line for any given period of time. There's a lot of turning going on, a lot of high force turning, actually. The key thing here is to make sure the car works in traffic, and that's a tough deal because the car changes throughout the race, and whoever does that is going to probably end up.
You see him right there talking. You're also watching him race, and Scott Goodyear came up to do battle with the leader, Scott Sharp. They are still behind Stefan Gregoire. Remember, Gregoire will be light on fuel. The other 2 cars on a full load, and I think they're going to be a little careful coming up to speed. But Goodyear tried to jump the leader and almost got it done.
Well, he really did. This is inside Goodyear's car. He got a great restart, got up alongside of Sharp, but Sharp was able to get after the throttle off of turn 1 and maintain that position.
First and second, Sharp and Goodyear past Stefan Gregoire. Now Greg Ray and Buddy Lazier have to handle him up. Ray gets the job done. Look at that group now. There goes Lazier.
Buddy Lazier going under Stefan Gregoire, and here comes Eddie Cheever right behind Lazier. This is looking out the back of Buddy's car. That's Cheever right behind him.
Cheever, that's a new livery for him this year. New colors on the car.
Yep, same sponsors, but a little different paint scheme and the same fast race car.
There goes Raul, 6th place. Mark Dismore still sitting there working on him. Kenny Breck right behind them, lags back about 50 yards.
That lead car in this shot is Bo Sell, the TransWorld car.
Breck's actually back a little further than that, on board with Mark Dismore. Boiselle just ahead.
And this is Dismore after the stop. Actually, Mark had the best pit stop of anybody. I think he came in 11th and came out 8th. So the Kelly team doing an excellent job in the pits for Mark Dismore.
Remember the job that they did last year. I mean, the Kelly team has been very sharp the past year, but a year ago here, Mark Dismore, you're on board with him now, leading with 5 laps to go, and they ran him out of fuel. Well, that's a hard-learned lesson.
It really is, but you know, when you cut it this tight, these things develop a lot of horsepower, and sometimes they're a little more thirsty than a guy'd like.
If you race go-karts, you certainly know the name of Mark Dismore. He builds one of the finest go-karts in the world from his place in Greenfield, Indiana. Driver that has never truly realized his full potential. He's had a lot of tough luck. This may be his year, and we talk about anticipation of a season. It's especially so for these kind of guys.
Again, this is off of turn 1, down what we call the back straightaway, entering turn 2. Let's listen and see if he has to lift on the throttle. You can hear him roll out of it just a little bit. Right back on it. Let's see if he can get through 3 flat. Yeah, I don't see much engine tone change there. So they're still getting through turn 3 flat. They're having to lift a little bit in turn 2.
Buddy Lazier chases Greg Ray. Ray in the 2 car on the left. Buddy Lazier, they've changed that car up a little since last year, not much. A little more white on it on the Delta Faucet car.
A little more white, but Buddy seems to have the stamina to not maybe qualify as good as he'd like sometimes, but in the race, they're always able to keep that car balanced.
Now, one of the things they like about Buddy Lazier and Ron Himmelgarn's team this year, guys, is the fact that there was no transition in personnel. Everybody's back. They've added a couple of more sponsors. They've got more test time. They think they're in a great position to run for a championship in 1999.
We're going to see another Lazier on the circuit very shortly, too, Tom.
Yeah, his Buddy's younger brother, I understand, passed his rookie test, so we're going to see him probably before Indianapolis.
Watching Bob Lazier, the father, who of course raced in these cars.
Oh!
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Greg Ray.
whoa, whoa. Greg Ray got it way out.
Well, he jumped right in behind the slower car, and it took the air off the front nose, and he had to skate the thing up the racetrack. Again, lost a lot of momentum.
And with that, of course, Buddy Lazier just skates on around. That gives him third place.
Well, we heard the drivers talk about momentum. You have to roll out of the throttle in the wrong spot, and it can really affect that lap time and what the competition does with you.
Wouldn't you love to see Ray's heart rate right now?
I don't think I'd like to listen to his radio right now.
So Eddie Cheever will now be chasing Greg Ray in the battle for fourth place. There's Cheever as he begins to just reel Ray in a little bit. Of course, when you go that high, you have to worry about tires.
Well, really, you can pick up debris. I mean, with both tire manufacturers trying to go as fast as they can, you get off the groove and you get up what we call those marbles. Sometimes the tires will pick that up, and it'll take a lap or two to get rid of that vibration, the rubber that the tire picked up from getting out of the groove.
Sharp leads it, then Goodyear, then Lazier. This is Greg Ray's little...
Well, again, he's up tight. He looks down low, but he sees he can't make it. But he's so tight, and he gets in pretty hot. He loses the front end. He loses the air off those front wings, and he has to skate the car up the racetrack.
Now, pretty neat piece of driving just to save it. Look at Cheever. Cheever moves on Greg Ray, and Cheever's got him.
Again, traffic. Traffic is causing this momentum to switch, and if your head's up, you can take advantage of it.
Here comes Raul Boisel. He gets around Greg Ray. Now it's an entirely different question, and I'm wondering about those tires.
Well, it could be actually a slow leak, Paul, because obviously he's having more trouble than we'd anticipate. So he might have a very slow leak that's causing that car to change its handling.
Cheever with a nice move from 13th to 4th. Hamilton, he's coming up through the field.
This is the inside Boisel. This is inside Dismore. You can see Greg Ray right in front of him, skating around. So Dismore's putting a lot of pressure on him right there.
We got a glimpse, too, on the outside of Dismore of Buzz Balkins, the inaugural winner here.
That's Mark Dismore there. Greg Ray in the yellow car right in front of him.
Battle for 5th. Ray currently occupies it.
This is inside Mark's car.
79 laps complete. 5 of the top 8 drivers are looking for their first IRL victory. Dismore comes in to worry Ray a little bit. They've got some traffic. Let's see what happens here. Heading for turn 2. Dismore moves inside.
Well, again, Greg Ray had to check up a little on the exit, and Mark Dismore did not, and he was able to get the run and get on by.
Something not working for Greg Ray now. So at the front, Sharp, Goodyear, and Lazier. No changes in position while we've been away at the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200. There's the top of the field. That all remains unchanged. But there is a battle now developing up at the front of the field between Scott Sharp and Scott Goodyear. Mark Dismore, he's still moving his way through, and Greg Ray, well, Jackaroo, what are they saying about him?
Well, they're scratching their heads down in his pit. They're not sure what the problem is. Ray's been literally silent on the radio. All the telemetry coming back to pit road says there is not a problem. Could be just race traffic. Let's check in with Gary.
And the story for Eddie Cheever, remember he started in the 7th row in 13th. He's currently running 4th. On that first round of pit stops, they added a little front wing. They gave him almost too much push, but they like it. They say the track is coming toward their race car. Clearly, Cheever becoming a factor, and there's a lot of traffic in front. He may be able to tighten up a battle for 3rd very shortly.
By reading across the bottom of the screen there, you know we're approaching the halfway, and that Cheever is closing on Lazier. But we're going to focus on this fight that is very close separation now as Scott Goodyear works his way around Stefan Gregoire through the traffic and trying to catch that dot up ahead. That dot is the Kelly car of Scott Sharp.
Well, actually, Goodyear was a lot closer just a few laps ago, Paul, but he got sort of stuck in traffic, and Sharp did not, so Sharp got away a little bit. But when they're both clean, it looks like Goodyear is running just a little bit quicker than Scott Sharp.
Scott Sharp, he looked back from his car a second ago. That's what he sees in his mirrors. It's what you want to see. Nice, clean race course behind him. Second place, almost a straightaway back now.
The mirrors are pretty tiny, Paul. You don't really get a good vision out the back of these things, but you need all you can get.
Sharp, Goodyear, Lazier, Cheever. And there is the 5th place car, Raul Boisel.
Oh, on the outside, you see right in front of him. I'm not sure those two cars saw each other right away, but they gave each other room.
Gregoire, again, interesting. Stefan, who's a very clean driver, has been a factor for the leaders much of the run. You see Greg Ray coming way down to the inside on board Dismore now. But Ray, he took a real serious look at him.
Well, again, that was Dismore going underneath Stefan and just barely saw him in time.
And here comes Jeff Ward up to challenge Greg Ray. Back at the front, Scott Sharp. Goodyear's closing.
Again, traffic, heavy traffic. If you catch it,
Goodyear.
you see him had to check up. He had to check up right in that corner. You heard Goodyear lift. He caught him right entering the corner, so he had to back out of the throttle a little bit, giving Sharp a little bit of a cushion again.
You don't really go charging up on somebody and then suddenly decide to back out. You really try to kind of sneak up there.
Well, it just depends. A lot of times this new in the season, you don't recognize the guy that's in front of you. You got new paint schemes, you got new drivers. Your book on some of these drivers isn't complete, so it's hard to anticipate or predict what they might do.
That was Arie Luyendyk's great line at this race last year, was that there was so many changes in the colors and combinations on the cars that he kept radioing in asking who's in front of me. Don't forget our coverage of the Indianapolis 500, May 22nd and 23rd. It's the time trials for the greatest spectacle in racing, featuring many of the drivers that are racing here. And then on May 30th, join us for the 83rd running of the great race from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And Paul, that Indy 500 may be just exactly what Raul Boisel is thinking about as he continues to run in the top 5. I just checked with his crew and his owner, Dennis McCormick, and I said, is everything okay? He said, yeah, it's great. I said, well, how come you're not leading? He said, we want to leave here with a top 5 finish, go to Phoenix, and then we'll show our stuff at the Indy 500.
Raul is just having a wonderful run in 5th, back at the front. Goodyear is there. Sharp leads. He's red from the start. We're approaching the halfway point now.
Well, and Goodyear's approaching Sharp, so Goodyear is definitely a little quicker right now.
We'll just ride with Goodyear when we can. Watch him try to reel Sharp in. Look at the traffic up ahead of Scott Sharp.
Now this is where they're trying to predict or anticipate what those guys are going to do before they get to him. This is this psychic thing that we talked about on the opening, Paul.
Yeah, and we see how Goodyear is doing on his psychic aspects right now. Reaches into his crystal ball, decides to stay lined up behind Scott Sharp. TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200 has just crossed the halfway point. I'm Paul Page with Tom Sneva. The leader of the race, he's led all the way thus far, has been Scott Sharp. Of course, he had to give up really a couple laps under yellow, but he's been the dominant factor. And Scott Goodyear, you're on board with him now. He's in 2nd place, and he's been worrying Scott Sharp something awful the past couple laps. Buddy Lazier is 3rd, then Eddie Cheever, and then Raul Boisel.
And Paul, the handling on your leader, Scott Sharp, has gone away. He's radioed in frantically. They've gone softer on the bars in the front, harder in the bars in the back. Tom, that means you're searching to get the car to stick again.
Well, if they're going that direction, you've got understeer. The front tire, the front doesn't want to turn. The car's understeering or it's pushing. And again, that's causing him to have to keep out of the throttle, not jump back into the throttle as quick as he'd like.
Goodyear tries to force his way inside using the traffic. In fact, he gets him. It's like a hot dog wrapper or something on the front of Scott Sharp's car. Hope that doesn't flop back into the coolers of the car. But Goodyear takes the lead.
Well, that happened between turns 2 and 3. That's very unusual there, Paul, that it would show up that much. So Sharp's handling has dropped off dramatically.
Oh, Scott Goodyear, Panther team, Quarterback Jim Harbaugh, big part of that operation, loves his racing.
The front bar, stop the rear bar.
Now this is Buddy Lazier. And look at this. Something is definitely wrong with Sharp's car.
Well, we heard the crew talking to Scott Sharp on the radio, telling him to soften the front bar and stiffen the rear, again indicating that the car is pushing. But obviously Sharp has already done that. He's probably out of a range of motion, so he's going to need to wait till the next pit stop to make a serious correction.
He's in big trouble now. Here's Eddie Cheever, the 51 car coming up, moving on him.
Again, Sharp and Eddie Cheever. The high-pitched voice of Scott.
Yep.
I really lose the front end, he's saying.
Let's just listen to him for a while.
You heard him say, in traffic, I really lose the front end.
I mean, it's big time, Scott. Repeat, it is big time.
Cheever comes in, darts to the inside. Cheever's got him. So from first back to fourth, just that quick. Yellow comes out.
Trouble off of turn number 3 against the wall.
Over on the front stretch, two cars.
22 and 14.
It's real tough to run side by side through turn 3 when you're so close to flat out.
Kenny Breck and Walter Salas. Kenny Breck driving for A.J. Foyt.
And that's Walter Salas right there.
Breck, the defending series champion.
Okay. Again, this is off of turn 2, going to turn 3. Oh, Breck just ran right into the back of him. Salas, I don't think Kenny realized that Salas was going to jump out of the throttle that hard, but Kenny drove right into the back of him and punted them both into the wall. This is Kenny Breck getting out of the car now. He's okay.
Again, in fact, that may be a first race product. New car, new driver, new colors. He had no idea. And we're going to take you on board with Kenny Breck, show you the way he saw it.
Again, Salas, the white car right in front of him. Well, look at that. Salas really had to jump out of the throttle. It really surprised Kenny Breck, and he just drove into the back of him.
Well, and you saw that he jumped out of the throttle because there was some blow-by there all of a sudden. So Kenny Breck, the defending champion, out of the race. Let's go to John Saunders in our Wide World of Sports studio in New York.
The Pep Boys Indy Racing League. Today featuring the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200 continues.
Well, let's get you up to speed for the last few moments, because when the yellow came out, everybody came into the pits. Look at this with Buddy Lazier and Steve Knapp.
There's a little touch there. Now, we can't tell from that view if it was enough to affect the handling on Buddy's car, and he won't know until he gets up to speed.
Here's the way it looked from the cockpit of the car. Now watch Knapp come in here. There he is.
Right there. It touches the right front wing. Touches the right front wing. Again, from this view, we can't tell if it affected the angle of that front wing and what that'll do to the balance.
So that gets you up to speed on what happened the last few minutes. Why we're here? Well, this is the zone of the accident when it was Kenny Breck coming down behind a slower car of Walter Salas.
And again, we're looking at turn 3. This is inside Kenny Breck. The yellow car right there is Greg Ray. He's going by Salas underneath. Now, poor Walter, this is his first race with this team. He just jumps out of the throttle. The car is probably loose, and he's trying to save his life. Kenny Breck doesn't realize how loose Walter's car is and runs into the back of him.
Well, it was pretty close, too. Watch the tire as it bounces up. Almost gets Kenny Breck in the head.
Well, that's one of the real troubles with these cars, but they've actually done a lot of some of the update kit for these cars this year, or more protection on the side pods, more thicker honeycomb that will give the driver a better shot in this specific deal.
Now, it looks like Lazier is okay. We are still under yellow in the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200. Boys Indy Racing League. Still under caution here in the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200, but the key move of the day may in fact have just been played as Raul Boesel, in the lead of the race, came in at the end of this caution period because we expect to go green and made a stop.
Well, again, they tried to stretch it as long as they could in hopes that this might be their last pit stop of the day.
Boy, that's a reach, like 82 laps to make it to the checkered flag.
Well, they might need a little help from a yellow. That's not a real conservative exit if they're trying to conserve fuel, Paul.
What do you think, Jack?
Well, they're just going to roll the dice. Brad McCandless is the crew chief, and Dennis McCormick, the owner, said that's what you got to do when you come to Florida with a best of sixth place car. They think that the rest of the field out there is going to have to pit one more time. They get a little luck. They may find their way to victory lane for the sponsor of the race. It's the sponsor of their car as well.
Well, based on the average yellow to this point, that's probably a pretty good bet to make, but we have yet to see. Now, Scott Goodyear, there he is, the leader of the race. He gets a little bit of a break here. Davey Hamilton, who is not with the leaders, is lined up just behind him. So he'll come back to the race. The fourth car back, that's Eddie Cheever. He's second place. On board with Scott Sharp, trouble off of turn one.
Again,
Sharp sees the yellow.
A couple cars, at least 3 cars involved.
That slows it down, and that plays in. Oh, no, Buddy Lazier is involved. That plays into the hands of Boesel.
I don't even think they touched the wall, guys. They were just spins. They only hit each other.
Again, you heard him talk about touching each other to cause the accident to begin.
The second car they're talking about is the 10 car of John Paul Jr. One of our new winners last year. There he is, driving for Jonathan Bird. I don't see anything on either car, Tom, but, you know, we're only looking at one side. Now, remember that accident, the most serious one of the day with Kenny Breck and Walter Salez. Gary Gerald, how's Kenny?
Well, fortunately, he's been released from the safety center. He's standing here. Kenny, tell us what happened, because it looked like you really ran up hard on Walter's number 22 car.
Yeah, we were dicing, me and Greg Ray, and Greg Ray managed to get past Salas, and I stuck him behind to go through 3, but his engine blew right in front of me, so, you know, it's just like someone nailing the brakes in front of you. I had no chance to avoid it. It was just no chance.
As defending champion of this series, it couldn't be a worse way, I suppose, to start a new season. Have you even thought about that, and how much is it going to set you back?
No, you know, we try to go forward, and we're going to go to Phoenix with high hopes, and just right. It's not a good way to start the season, but it's nothing freak deals like that. What can you do about it? You know, just the AJ Foyt Power Team car ran great, and we're just going to go to the next race and try to be up front there.
Happy you're all right.
Thank you.
Paul.
Well, and then so we don't indict him anymore, let's make sure we understand that Salez did have an engine go. Even Kenny Breck recognizes. We saw and mentioned that puff. Looky here.
Well, it was a small puff out of Salez's car, and again, Kenny didn't have any chance, just being at the wrong place at really the wrong time.
Well, and here is a strange occurrence. This is Jeff Ward, who was in fourth. He's come into the pits. They pulled the nose on the car, and it looks like they're going to change that out. So a tough break at this point in the run for Jeff Ward. And we're going to go back and take a look at the Lazier John Paul Jr. situation. On board with Lazier.
Well, that's Lazier on the outside of him is Scott Sharp. Yeah, they definitely touched. Scott was going to try to go on the outside, couldn't make that move go, and actually cut down. Didn't realize that Lazier was there.
This is Dismore.
Again, those two touched, Lazier and Scott Sharp.
Actually, pretty savvy move by Dismore. Fastest way to slow the car down is to get it totally sideways. That's what he did, caught the spin, and kept going. But Buddy Lazier now out of the pits. I'll tell you what, he's got some problems.
Green flag, green flag.
Well, the Pep Boys Indy Racing League is rolling again. You saw the damage on the left side of Scott Sharp's car. He's running third right now. Buddy Lazier and John Paul Jr. after the incident both dropped at least 2 laps behind the race, down to 16th and 17th. That's why we said the Lazier was in some pretty serious trouble. He's got 2 whole laps to try to make up to get in the fight at the front where he was earlier. Well, Scott Goodyear is the leader of the race. Eddie Cheever is second. And then this car, Scott Sharp.
And again, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a big donut right on the left side pod of this car that we're on the in-car camera with. He was very lucky to get away with it. Instead of touching tires, they actually touched the side pod, which enabled Sharp to really get away with one.
You remember, too, Steve Knapp, who had that little contact situation in the pits with Buddy Lazier. Last year's Indy 500 Rookie of the Year is doing pretty good today. Right now, he's up to 6th place. Jack?
We checked with David Cripps, who calls the shots on Scott Sharp's car, asked him about the problems that they've been encountering before that little dinger that he had. He said, we think that we solved those problems during the pit stop. Asked if he was concerned about that little wheel donut you saw. He said, no. One thing they say they're going to try and do, though, is change the line in traffic for Scott Sharp to drive. They want to get him in a little bit more clean air, especially in heavy traffic.
Well, that's easy, Jack, for the engineers of talking about changing your line, but when there's that kind of traffic out there, sometimes you don't have any choice but what line to take.
Your line's dictated by everybody else. Dismore got around Ray. Now you're with Dismore as he's chasing his teammate Sharp. Ray's right behind him. Ray on the left of your screen. Now back to Dismore again. The teammates are going to have to do battle for 3rd place. Dismore and Sharp. Dismore's progress through the field have a car slowing, but maybe far enough off the course. Over in turn 2. Remember, 3 turns on this course. I had a glimpse of them for a second there. Watching Scott Goodyear. The Pep Boys Indy Racing League. Scott Goodyear is leading it. That's him right there. Eddie Cheever's about 3.5 seconds behind him in 2nd place, followed by 2 teammates, Scott Sharp and Mark Dismore. And then Greg Ray. Raul Boisel, who had a very nice strategy with a late yellow stop, hasn't been able to turn that into much, though. He's now back in 7th place. But 7th place is only 10 seconds behind Scott Goodyear, the leader.
Well, and again, they pitted real late in the last yellow, hoping to take enough fuel with enough laps left to not have to stop again. So he's have to go through traffic. He's in a lot of dirty air, but it remains to be seen if the strategy is going to pay off.
And before you heave another bottle at your television set, this is tough for announcers, too. We know that there's 2-way radio communication there. We're trying to get to it as well as get to where everybody is because it's moving very fast. Red car with yellow trim. That's 6th place, Steve Knapp.
Right behind him is
Raul, you bet. I'm trying to get him here, too.
Well, in that red car right that we're looking out of the front of Raul's car, Steve Knapp has done a tremendous job. We talked to him yesterday. He was real happy with the car and the way it was handling and thought he'd be good in the race. And sure enough, today's the day.
Wide, gave him room, but of course he didn't take it. Back looking back. Scott Goodyear, the leader of the race, trying to become the 15th different winner in 25 IRL events. Next on ABC Sports, except on the West Coast, the pros have the course to themselves. The final day of the 40th annual Bob Hope Chrysler Classic. Fred Funk led by 1 shot over Steve Tate going in today's 5th and final round. Don't forget, auto racing, golf, you name it. It's on AOL. Keyword is ABC Sports.
Well, we got Goodyear leading, but Cheever's coming, Paul. Cheever's actually quicker in the racetrack right now than our leader.
There's Cheever. His team manager, Dick Perrin, very likable guy. Going to head over to China shortly to adopt their second child. After they made the plans, they found out that
look at this with the lead right there. Cheever takes a look at Goodyear.
Wow, Cheever right in there.
We get in traffic. Goodyear's got somebody right in front of him, but look at Cheever being able to get after the front.
Cheever charging on the inside. They're side by side. Greg Waugh, the car just ahead of him. Goodyear gets trapped just a bit. Cheever comes around.
Good move by Eddie. But what set that up is he was able to jump after the throttle off of turn one just a little bit quicker than Scott, and that gave him the run entering turn two.
You were talking the psychic factor. About the psychological factor. Here's the defending Indianapolis 500 champion, a champion out of this race as well. What a boost that will be for him as he heads off for Indianapolis, just not for himself, but in all of his efforts to keep that team focused and together. Cheever started 13th today. He now runs in the lead. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
The Pep Boys Indy Racing League. Today featuring the TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200 continues.
Back with the Pep Boys Indy Racing League. Eddie Cheever, there he is. He's the leader of the race. Scott Goodyear is trying to chase him down from second place. Scott Sharp sits in third, followed by his teammate Mark Dismore, and then Greg Ray. Now we're expecting pit stops about any time from many of these. It's going to be the fuel battle that plays well in this race. 153 laps in the record book. And that's second place, Scott Goodyear. Now joining us in the booth now, man who last year kind of wavered back and forth about retiring, still seems to be wavering a little bit. Ari Lyondike, who came in as a coach for the Treadway team, but we're going to see you run at the Indy 500, aren't we?
That's right. Great race we got going on here today, and it's fun to watch this kind of racing going on. It's too bad I'm not out there.
I got to say, you were better out there than you were as a coach.
Hey, you know what? My guys both had accidents, and I had nothing to do with that.
Well, Sneva said that you coached him into it.
No.
No, actually, I didn't say that. But
I had nothing to do with that.
You know, a lot of us were surprised, though, Ari. You ended up the season with a victory, and yet you decided that maybe Indianapolis is going to be your last race.
Well, that's for sure. Indianapolis will be my last race, and you know, decisions like that doesn't get made overnight. I was thinking about retiring from about 96 on already, but things happen, and you know, you either do it or you don't, and I finally made up my mind and made a decision.
Raul Boesel makes the move on Steve Knapp. That's been working for some time and puts Boesel into 6th place. Back at Walt Disney World Speedway, Eddie Cheever leading, chased by Goodyear, Sharp, Dismore, and Greg Ray. That's Raul Boesel, who just moved into 6th place as he came around Steve Knapp. Ari Lyondike in the booth with us. Ari, for the Lyondike name, though, your son's racing pretty good now.
Well, Ari Jr. just started driving Formula Ford 1600s, and this summer he'll be racing in the Dutch Formula Ford Championship, and we'll see what happens. He enjoys it and does well.
Well, why don't you just sit here for a few minutes with us, Ari, since... Oh, no,
trouble.
Greg Ray's got a problem.
This will bring out a yellow pretty soon, and we'll see guys going into the pit.
Exactly what I wanted you to do, though. Just join the coverage team here. You may have a job in this coming up.
You know, I just love watching this race today. Today has been a great race with racing everywhere. Started off a little shaky, a couple of yellows, and it's just been a tremendous race to watch.
You're right. The key is going to be pit stops as they bring the yellow, if they bring the yellow out.
Well, they've actually got a black flag out for Greg Ray. There's the black flag. You can see it. Greg Ray doesn't look like he's slowing down for it yet.
Ryan Howard, the starter, gives him the black, and here's your leader. He comes around Davey Hamilton and works his way through traffic.
You can see the yellow car right behind him. Again, working through heavy traffic. A lot of times this will cause a big close-up between the positions.
I think what they're trying to do is stretch it maybe 1 or 2 laps and hope everybody goes into the pit, and then they can just join in and not lose a lap.
Yeah, we've got Bosell out there that we think at this point is the only one that thinks he can maybe go the whole distance. Everybody else is going to have to stop, so this is going to be interesting.
Billy Boat just came into the pits.
Now the key today is pit stops and traffic. And Eddie got around Scott Goodyear in some traffic. But Eddie's team has been doing a phenomenal job in the pits. They moved him up 3 positions in the last pit stop, I think. So Eddie's looking pretty strong on both ends.
Greg Ray's team recognizes the problem, has called him in. They're ready for him in the pits.
Again, it obviously wasn't a problem on the racetrack because nobody slowed down any, and they got Greg Ray off before it caused a big problem for anybody else.
Now, the report we're getting down here, guys, is that he is spraying fuel. So John Menard, who sent them call him in, and now all of a sudden they're rethinking this situation one more time. Still waiting for Ray's appearance on pit road.
Well, I'm not so sure they can rethink it because the black flag with the right cross just came out.
Here he comes. Here we go. That got his attention.
That one tells you to get in the pits and get in now. Here's Greg Ray.
So far, they're just going to go to work like it's a nominal pit stop.
Well, fuel on the racetrack isn't going to make it slippery, but it's definitely going to hurt his fuel mileage.
Well, I'll tell you what was strange there is I didn't see them initiate any repairs whatsoever. In fact, we're going to try and get word with somebody here and see if we can find out why no changes were made.
Yeah, no kidding. I was watching the vent at the back of the car, too, and it's still kind of puffing a little bit back there.
No, it's puffing all right, but they didn't even look at it, so they must be convinced that's the deal.
Let's ask John Menard real quick. I thought you were black flagged for spraying fuel, but no repairs were made.
I'm not too sure. We're black flagged because they said we were spraying some fluids. We came in and looked at it. We don't see anything happening, but you just don't know. We're a little bit confused ourselves why we were black flagged.
Start of a season, confusion is not what you want, but you roll the dice whenever you can.
Sometimes the crews will put the blinders on. They don't want to look for anything too close.
He's spraying pretty good.
Yeah, well, as he came down the stretch between 1 and 2, Greg Ray was spraying real good, and he's now turned down for the pits. But the important point in this is it did not bring out the yellow.
Well, and he's back in the pits again, so obviously the IRL isn't convinced that they've solved the problem.
Yeah, Greg Ray certainly was spraying, and I think he saw that himself.
And he...
Cheever, Goodyear, Sharp, the front of the field. The battle continues. Eddie Cheever is on his way into the pits, the leader of the race with the Pit Boys Indy Racing League. It's a little earlier than we thought. Another car burns it heading out.
Well, everybody's making the late stops. This is in their window.
Well, Scott Goodyear assumes the lead with Cheever in. Very careful stop.
Everything looking routine. Owen Snyder, the veteran who's won twice at Indianapolis as a crew chief, works the right front. The fuel is in. Radiator openings cleared. No changes on the balance of the car. He's rolling. We got him in 13.5 seconds here, Paul.
Good clean stop under green situation. There's a lot of pressure when it's green. They've had yellows most of the day, but they did good under that green situation.
Question mark is now what's going to happen with Raul Boesel.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, Ari. As Scott Goodyear picks up the lead, we figure that he comes in 1 lap. You just hear the radio comms. But what about Boesel because of that late stop under yellow?
Everybody came in on the last stop, and then he came in like 3 laps later and had to rejoin the field. And I was wondering about that tactic myself, but it might play into his hands right here.
Well, Boesel was about to get lapped by Cheever just before he came in. But again, if it's under the green, he could get that lap back.
So here comes Scott Goodyear into the pits, Jack.
And Kevin Boggs brings him to a stop. Now Kevin will change the outside, the right front tire. They've had a long-term association even before Panther Racing, and they don't anticipate making any major major changes on Scott Goodyear. Before the start of this race, Scott said this was going to be their day. He is off and away. You heard that pop, pop, pop. He was all the way up on the rev limiter. He's got the passion going full fire. To update you as well, guys, for Raul Boisel, they still intend to roll the dice. They are not planning on coming back in.
Scott Goodyear made no changes to his car, so he's pretty happy with car.
Now, Goodyear stopped 3 seconds faster than Cheever. Boisel, he's going to be the key now. Sharp leads the race, but if he doesn't stop, the real question, though, Ari, is going to be, he's going to have to drive 82 laps, and that would seem like it's going to be a mighty dry fuel tank.
Well, this is Sharp. He's due to come in just a couple laps. He's the last one of the guys that are going to make a stop to stay on the racetrack.
Well, they're going to roll the dice, which means that they're going to turn the fuel down. They're going to run the car leaner for Raul Boisel, and they might just hope and pray for a yellow.
You can hear the crew trying to talk to Scott to try to get him into the pits.
It's wide open, Scott, wide open. Let's take it nice and easy. Watch his speed, watch his speed.
Scott Sharp, the leader now at the 180th lap. Second place is Raul Boisel. Third place, Eddie Cheever. Leader just a few moments ago as Sharp comes on the pit road. Boy, what an interesting play this is going to be in the end game. Jack?
Scott Sharp has ridden the roller coaster of emotions. First, the car was perfect. Then they chased the handling. Now they're doing a timed stop. They're not going to take a full tank of fuel. David Cripps is counting it off, waiting to tell them when they're away. They're a little slow getting back on the throttle, but it was still 11.2 seconds.
You see him get it sideways.
Whoa.
It's getting giddy up.
This is exactly what Raul needs.
There it is.
And here's the yellow that works for Boisel, and this John Hollingsworth against the wall. Looks like he's going to be able to drive it in.
He came to rest. Raul, we're about 3 laps from the end. That's all we've got. Go real easy on your fuel.
Again, that's Boisel's crew talking to him about his fuel situation.
He's turned the fuel all the way back to full lean, and he's just going to putt around as slow as he can and use as less fuel as he can.
This is Hollingsworth's car. He's up against the wall. You see him fooling with his visor, so he doesn't appear to be injured.
And there is Raul Boisel. Got exactly the break that he needed. All right, Lyondike, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it very much. We look forward, though, to seeing you in a race car in the 83rd running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
As we are right now, we're going to splash and go at 190.
We'll be right. Well, John, still under yellow here. But, boy, I'll tell you what, it is set up to be a great finish. We keep an eye on the track for when they're ready to go back to go green. Tom Binford, who was the chief steward of the Indianapolis 500 for 21 years and through some very tough times at the Speedway, passed away last week. Now, Tom was that patient, smiling man who carefully controlled the great race. But Tom was also a university president, a bank president, the CEO of an oil and a lumber company. Tom was a civic leader and a tireless campaigner for civil rights. But what he loved most was his car racing. So we're watching Brian Howard, the starter. He communicates with Brian Barnhart from Race Control. And they decide to tell Johnny Rutherford when the pace car should head off the course. Now on February 1st, RPM denied.
Well, Paul, obviously the big question now is how much sailboat fuel does Boisel have in that car?
And that is supposed to mean?
Air in that tank. You know, how much fuel's in it and how much air's in that tank?
This was this morning during the warm-up with Raul. Watch how close he was not to being in the lead of this race now.
Look at that hand shuffle, Paul. I mean, he did a great job. He got pinched down a little bit. The car got knocked sideways, and he had the quick hand shuffle going.
He's in a lot better shape right now. Raul Boisel, the leader of the race. It's a fuel gamble for them if they decide to take it all the way, and it looks like they're going to. Eddie Cheever, Scott Goodyear, Jeff Ward, second, third, and fourth. They've all refueled. Scott Sharp, he's a lap back. He's going to be ahead of the leader of the race, so he might figure into this thing. And Jack Arute, what's going on with the fuel game?
The fuel game right now, they say Dennis McCormick and Brad McCandless were going to stay out. Also did a little quick politicking, trying to get Scott Sharp to drop down low and give Raul Boisel clear sailing at the drop of the green. We'll have to wait and see.
And for Eddie Cheever, who stalks in second place, no radio communication. He can't get any information from his crew. They're frustrated here as he'll try to get through the traffic. We go green.
Heading for the checkered flag and the end of the run now. It's only about 11 miles away for Raul Boisel, whose best IRL finish was 8th in Phoenix last year. If he can simply hold on and has enough fuel. Very likable man from Miami, Florida. Looking now back for Cheever. There's second place. He's going to handle up some more traffic. 2 more cars. One of them, of course, is Scott Sharp. Well, right now is in 5th, but a lap back.
Exactly. Right behind Boisel is Sharp, who's led a lot of this race, but he's a lap down. I thought he'd be able to put a little more pressure on Raul at this point because Raul's got to be conserving fuel.
We'll keep the two-way communications up for you.
That was looking out the back of Boisel's car right into Sharp's eyeballs.
We're running out.
Now, I think that's a let him go. That's what I would figure because he's trying to save fuel.
Well, exactly. He's got to be running the car real lean.
Well, it's more...
Guys, that's exactly what he said on the radio. We're running out. We're calling him in right now for a splash and go.
And they quickly realize it in the Cheever pit, guys. High fives.
Oh, here comes Cheever. Here comes Cheever. And he's around. Cheever is looking strong now. Oh, man, the gamble simply did not pay off and a long way from the finish. Eddie Cheever, with 7 to go, picks up the lead. Boisel to the pits.
Way too much sailboat fuel in that Boisel car.
The engine is still fired. They never stalled it, so it was a case of running right down to where the fuel pickup would starve it in the corners.
Now we're looking back from Cheever. There's Scott Goodyear. He's the next challenger. On board Goodyear. 6 to go. First race of the season for the Pep Boys Indy Racing League.
Well, Scott's got a little bit of traffic to go to before he has any kind of contact with Cheever, so right now Eddie's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he's 3 seconds back from Eddie Cheever as the leader. Jeff Ward is in 3rd with 5 to go. There comes Cheever, the leader. Now we're going to look back and show you Goodyear. There's the distance. Got plenty of traffic in front of him.
The second yellow car in that shot. This is inside Goodyear's car. You can see the traffic he's got to deal with.
Time and distance running out.
You see him give a little signal. The guy let him go, and he tried to say he appreciated it.
You heard his spotter say clear.
3 to go, kid, 3 to go.
Eddie Cheever, the leader, 51, 3 to go. What an amazing turn of events for the Indy 500 champion. What a boost that's going to give this team. And there's the interval. At least got past Dismore.
Feels like there's going to be a lot of potato chips consumed tonight in that Rachel's group.
Rachel's Potato Chip, the sponsor on the car. Goodyear moves to almost 4 seconds back as the white flag with 1 lap to go comes out for Eddie Cheever. Goodyear in 2nd. Doesn't have to protect the position at this point. Ward in 3rd. Sharp 4th. Boisel fell back to 5th place when he had to come in for fuel. Eddie Cheever working his way around. A very nice, very eloquent young man, and he makes a 2nd victory here at Walt Disney World Speedway. The 3rd career victory for Eddie Cheever, because the other one, of course, is his Indy 500 win.
The TransWorld Diversified Services Indy 200. This ABC Sports exclusive brought to you by TransWorld Diversified Services, transforming companies and career. Frost Brewed Coors Light, who reminds you the three most important words are hey, beer, man. Pennzoil with Pure Base, made for the way you drive. Stop, go, Pennzoil. And the all-new Alero by Oldsmobile. Start something.
Here in the Pep Boys winner circle with Eddie Cheever, the winner here. Any close calls today, Eddie, or was it just flat-out racing?
I was flat out the whole way. I had a hard time in qualifying. We didn't get it up as fast as we could have, but my car was impeccable. I thought I was second. I had a problem with the radio towards the end, and I thought it was Sharp's car up ahead, and I was doing everything I could, and it wasn't working. So I thought I finished second. They told me to come in here. I'm happy to be first.
Hey, Paul's an Orlando resident. Big party at Eddie's house tonight.
Eddie Cheever takes his third win. The next stop for the IRL on ABC is our coverage of the 83rd running of the great Indianapolis 500.